Like, I can't grasp the reality of saying that I accept someone would never be seen again.
Yeah, that's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
So I feel like I do push through most days, and I feel like I am able to have these conversations better than I was before, but I don't feel like I still am at 100%.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mental Uplift Podcast, where we'll be discussing mental health, self-care, and how to navigate your day-to-day life while experiencing mental challenges. I'm your host, Britney, and this is your host,
Joey. And today, specifically on this episode, we're going to be aiming to talk about grief. What comes with grief during specific times, regarding for the holidays, because right now, as we're recording this, it is during the holiday time, and we are going to be talking about that and how to kind of navigate through these times while experiencing grief. So to begin, we can start talking about what is grief. Do you have any insight you'd like to provide? I have a little bit that I have.
I think I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Okay.
Because I don't have any, at the top of my head, I have a couple things about it.
Yeah. So this one is hard.
Yeah, it is.
It's a kind of making this was like a scary / happy. I want to make this so bad, but for a sad reason. Basically, it's like I want to make it because I experienced this and I want to share the help, but obviously because I experienced it is why I want to share. I wish I didn't have to experience it, but we all do experience it. So that's why I'm trying to take a positive light on everything in hopes that my experience can help alleviate another person's experience, if I'm saying the right word. Right? Make somebody feel better.
Yeah. To provide an understanding.
Lessen the hurt.
Yeah. To ease the pain.
Yeah.
Something to help ease the pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, to kind of start, I notated the stages of grief.
Okay.
So one, I know the most common kind of chart there is on the stages of grief. There's 5 stages, but there was one that I found that were 7 stages, and I like it a little bit better because it gives 2 more spots in the stages, and I feel like it's good because I feel like it's a very long process to get to the last ending goal. And I feel the more stages, the better, because it's realistic. For me personally, it takes a long time, and I'm still in a very awkward stage, but it's I definitely rather choose the additional steps because I need all the steps I can possibly take.
Yeah.
So basically, to begin with, the first stage is shock and denial. Yeah, so
that's hard.
It is hard, and it's no matter what type of grief you go through, this is one of the hardest. It's very weird. It's just weird.
Yeah, the first stage, being in denial, is definitely a key part of grief. You have to, I feel like during my grief in particular, it feels like, oh, I'm just gonna see them later. They're at the store. This is not real. It's a nightmare. And that's the hardest part. It's for our most recent grief, is just ongoing. But I feel like this is such a hard thing to talk about. But I think the acceptance part is hard. Being in that state of mind of this is not happening. No way. For me, it's no way.
Yeah.
And to be able to like process it and say like, wait, I'm never gonna speak to this person ever again. Like there's no way. Like for me, it's like it's hard to accept that like you're not gonna have a conversation again with that person. And so that is where you start having like these mixed feelings, or even something that I feel like I felt was like nothing at first, if that makes sense. Like not nothing in a negative way, but just kind of like a numbness, if that's what I can explain as, like numbness. Like a kind of like a literally like what I'm like showing you like visually is like, and you're trying to understand it. Like, that's so hard. Like that first part.
It is. It's very hard, and like I said, that's why to me, I feel like the best word to sum it up is weird, because there's so many feelings going on. Things happen so fast that you're kind of just sitting there like, what is really happening? I don't think this is what's really happening. I don't think that's happening. Like, no, that's not true. Like, well, what do you mean? Like, there's a lot of questions. So before we even get deeper into it, I'm just gonna say, so our biggest experiences with grief have been in 2022. 2 years ago, we lost an aunt and my grandmother, and it was very hard. It was during holidays. It was in the early December, and it's still hard. And then the third point would be my other grandmother, who I just lost about 2 weeks ago, somewhere around there. So I just wanted to kind of just say that, because it will allow everything to make more sense.
A behind the scenes crew. You're so sweet.
So I did just wanted to talk about that and let everyone know our experience on grief before we get too deep into things, because I feel like it plays a big role, and it will help everyone visualize and see where we're speaking from, so they understand like some of the words that we might have to say, that if we don't want to speak too much on it, they know where it's coming from and what's going on.
I think something also worth mentioning during this time is that this specific episode is about grief and the holiday season. And I think it's important to mention that all three of the close like deaths that we had to experience have all been prior to holidays, like within days. So not saying that death that happens in like the beginning of the year, like a February or a March, doesn't impact your holidays, because we all experienced that first holiday without our loved ones, and that's super hard. But just certain things on like, just to shine the light on that sensitivity and on that topic in particular, it being like literally days before a holiday is very something worth mentioning. Like if you had to like take it from someone, to take it from us for sure, because like days before.
So that would lead us into our second point, the stages where you would experience pain and guilt. I feel like for me, with all of our situations, I experienced guilt with two experiences. I would say I feel like no matter who you are, there's always some sort of guilt that you can feel. There's always the littlest things that you can feel, no matter what type of love you have for whoever the person may be. There is always something that you will feel guilt for, but you cannot believe it. It is not true. I promise you, that person loved you. That person probably does not even remember what you feel guilty for. That person probably never felt the same way. They probably never want you to feel that way. So, but it's so much easier said than done. I just felt like I just wanted to say that, to share. that no matter who you are, no matter what your relationship to that person is, you most likely will feel guilt. It's a stage for a reason. It's common. It happens. You cannot feel that way. You have to continue to push and see more of a positive side no matter what, because I promise you, on behalf of the person you are grieving, they love you and they do not feel that you should put yourself through the guilt that you are putting yourself through.
Yeah, that's important. Something to point out what guilt looks like during the grief process is like, what if? That's like the biggest for me is like, what if I had spent more time with this person? What if I had been more intentional on seeing them more? Or what if I had visited them, had I noticed signs, right? Or like, and it's different for every person and how close they were to their loved one that they lost. But you always ask yourself, like, what if? You know, like for me, it's like, what if what if I had visited more or I should have done this, or I wish I would have called this person more. And it sounds so cliche when people say like, tomorrow's never promised, but genuinely, like living like that is so important. But at the end of the day, you have to extend grace to yourself because, you know, we're all going through life. Your loved one that passes also, you know, we're also going through life, and everyone has to navigate different parts of their life. You know, sometimes you don't have, not even to dwell on just the time, but just, I think the biggest thing that I see with like grief and guilt is like the time.
Yeah.
I wish I had more time. I wish I would have spent more time with them. But at the end of the day, you made time for them when you did and when you were able to. But that's something that's always gonna.
Yeah.
I wish I call them one last time, because you never know. Like, I didn't know my last hug was gonna be when it was. I didn't know that last call was gonna be when it was. And I guess, you know, that's why they say, like, you know, you treat it as if tomorrow's not coming.
And then the next thing with that is that kind of goes hand in hand is once you feel that pain and guilt, it can easily shift into anger. And then you start to beat yourself up about that guilt that you have, and it kills you inside, and there's nothing you can do, because now that person is gone, there is literally nothing in the world you can do that will make you feel better. So normally if you have somebody you feel guilt towards that's available, you know, you can take action, you can prove, you know, something to you that will make you feel better inside. But when they're gone, it's impossible. Like, there's nothing but time that will ease that pain, and it can easily turn into anger.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you get on yourself about it. You start to bargain as well. Is a part of it. You can ask God, please just, you know, give me this person back. Take me instead. You know, that's one of the most common, like why did this happen? You know, you question things, you're angry, you start to get mad at yourself, and it's a whole bunch of like mixed emotions I feel that go on in this stage. Do you have any input to provide on this stage?
I think, anger and guilt together is a very hard combination.
Yeah.
I think for me, like, I definitely feel like I beat myself up about that. Like, had I been more intentional, I wouldn't feel so guilty, you know? Had I been more intentional on planning visits, like, that goes hand in hand. All of it goes hand in hand together. And honestly, to be truthful, one thing about grief that I like to say is there's not one word or one specific statement or phrase that someone can say to you that's going to make you feel better. Like, the condolences are appreciated. For me, they're like acknowledgments of, we know what you're going through and I'm here, kind of like when someone gives me their condolences. But honestly, sometimes condolences, they feel like a reminder of what you're experiencing, because I wouldn't be getting so many notifications on my phone if this wasn't happening. So it's kind of like a reminder. And I'm not saying condolences aren't important, but sometimes, you know, I guess sometimes it's just okay to feel like these messages aren't really giving what they're supposed to give and not feel guilty about that. because one time I have felt like, dang, like these messages are making me feel a different way, and not like they weren't comforting.
Yeah.
And I have felt like, what's going on with me? You know, it's not comforting.
Well, I know, like for me, I usually, so far, from my experience, I ignore them. And it's not the best, and I apologize for anyone who felt ignored. But it is just a way that I process. I think I got to most of them when I could,
Yeah.
but for the most part, I just ignore it because I don't feel like you said, it doesn't feel like it helps.
Mm-hmm.
And if only thing it is a reminder, it does make me feel more and more bad. Like I feel like you can go through stages, like in minutes of where you don't feel anything, and then if you get that message, it brings it back up again. You go right back into a cycle of remembering sadness, and sometimes people share memories, and it's like a lot of people share photos, and it's like I sit there and I cry at the photo, and then I understand that's a healthy process, but it just hurts, and it better help me just to ignore it, and then get back to it. I knew it was there, so I got back to it when I was at a better state of mind.
Yeah.
And then because I also feel like a part that goes hand in hand with everything, which is the next step, would be like when you get to a depressive state, and specifically, obviously everything about it, you kind of go through that. But in this state, it's a little bit elevated. It's like kind of when things start to slow down in the world. Like, of course, you have so much people who are giving their condolences, who are with you all the time. But when that kind of starts to fade away, you start to kind of get into an isolated state, which I kind of explained that I was at a certain point in time, and I did just like ignore people. But that definitely is the next space, and then you kind of reflect on the loss within yourself. Everybody reflects in their own homes. Like, we come from a family where we gather a lot to help each other, but there is always going to be a point in time where the gathering slows down a little bit. You won't be gathering every single day, and
that's when it hits.
That's when it kind of hits, because you're not around everybody. And then on top of that, I am someone who am also being affected by not being around my family every day.
Yeah.
Because I get so used to being around the people I love, and not every moment of that is bad. We share memories together, and we have laughter, and it helps me a lot. But I feel like when that is gone as well, it's also like a little mini mourning in its own, because now I'm kind of, I'm not with my family every day, because everyone has their own lives and have to do, they have to go back to kind of what everything does. It kind of goes into what I explained to someone about, where it's like, it hurts when the world keeps moving and you have to keep on going.
Right, like
when you want to stop.
Right, like everyone else's life goes on, but yours feels like it's at like a standstill.
Like you want it to be at a standstill, I feel like.
Yeah.
But everything around you, the bills are still due. Your job still expects you to go to work. You want it to be at a standstill, but really it's not. And I feel like that's what hurts. And I feel like that's when you can easily get into a bad state. But once you get past that, you kind of start going to an upward turn, and this stage is one of the additional stages. It's called, they specify it as the upward turn, and at this point, it is, the anger and the pain have died down, and it's more of a calm state. And I feel like for this, I go back to a little bit of weirdness, because you now have to start to learn how to navigate. And I feel like it goes with the next also additional state, which is like the reconstruction and working through stage. It's like these two stages kind of can go together. It's like, the anger and pain have died down, and you kind of aren't at a state where you're super happy. Conversation about it may still bring up pain, but it is just like another weird state that you get to, that you have to, obviously, like we said, keep going in life, but you also still feel this.
Yeah, and that stage can be hard because that can trigger guilt. Because when you start to navigate life and you start to kind of like your Monday through Friday looks how it did prior to that loss. Like you said, you have to go back to work, and learning how to navigate life when you're experiencing loss is hard, and that can trigger guilt. Like, oh, look at me, I'm here, I'm having fun, or I even just laughing, like, oh, I'm laughing, or you're enjoying that day, and then you have like a wave of guilt that hits you. That's like, wait, this just happened to me. Like, why am I here doing these things? I think that's the hard part, like distinguishing how to move forward, but not in a light where it seems as though you're forgetting. Like, I guess you see what I'm trying to say? Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to forget what's happening, but now you have to, like, all right, it's time to get up. It's time to go back to work. And first of all, that's like one of the most defeating times, going back to work, having to do what you were doing prior. It is that in itself is just a process. But I guess just to sum up what I'm trying to say is that is, each stage is so hard. But I think that when you have to go back to being a mom, back to being a dad, a friend, a sister, a daughter, a son, like, and not only are we losing someone, but someone else is losing a mother. Someone else is losing, their grandmother, just as we did. Someone else is losing a best friend, and we're all grieving together. And like, that's just so hard to navigate. But you start to, on the brighter side, you definitely start to learn, like, okay, my days are getting a little bit easier, little by little. It does start to get better eventually. It's never going to be, like, grief is almost constant.
Mm-hmm.
It just creeps up on you. A scent can make you, like, feel grief.
Yeah.
A scent, a location, a place, driving by a place.
Eating food.
Yeah.
A meal, specific meal.
Yeah, it's just like
a phrase.
Like, just to lighten up the mood, shout out to my mom, Chamo King.
When I said a phrase, that's what I was thinking of.
Out there, like, our daughter will say, like, you smell like Chamo King. And if you don't know what Chamo King is, basically when you go outside and you come inside and you have that stench.
Yeah, I don't think anyone knows that it's not a real world, so I don't think anyone knows that.
No, so if you follow us, it's a little special word for you to start saying,
If you smell like Chamo King.
Bro, like, we came from the zoo.
Real.
We came from the zoo, and I was like, yeah, let's go see my mom real quick. And he's like, you gotta hit the shower first.
Yeah.
Like, you smell like Chamo King. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, she's trying to go, like, how you go to a petting zoo and then go to my mom's house? You smell like straight Chamo King.
Yeah, I mean,
no, thank you. I'm not getting yelled at.
I mean, yeah, see that. But, just like that, like, like sayings, they remind you of things. And, like, that's where that wave just randomly hits you. So,
yeah.
And you learn to navigate it better, though.
Yeah, and I feel like once you start to learn to navigate it is when you are technically in the last stage, which is acceptance and hope. In this stage, it's a very gradual acceptance, and I like that fact that it does say gradual, because like I said, it takes a long time and it's very slow. I don't want anyone to expect it to come overnight.
Right.
It's definitely something that takes a while. For me, I feel like I'm not yet at acceptance at all, because the word acceptance, I feel like I can't grasp the reality of saying that I accept someone will never be seen again.
Yeah, that's hard.
It's hard.
Yeah.
So I feel like I do push through most days, and I feel like I am able to have these conversations better than I was before, but I don't feel like I still am at 100%.
So to piggyback off what you were saying in regards to acceptance, I think sometimes that word for me brings too much, like, positivity. And, like, keeping it real, like, who wants to show, like, when are we actually going to say there's a positive outcome from death, like, from experiencing the loss? That for me is, like, hard to just say, okay, I've accepted it, now we move forward. That's hard. Like, just the word acceptance, I feel like I can say I'm going to move forward in the right direction. When you say acceptance, it kind of feels like a little bit, I don't know, it's hard to explain that. But I see what you're saying in regards to acceptance is, like,
it is.
You never want to sit there and say, oh, yeah, okay, well, this is how my life is going to go now without this person. It's like, it's not like that. It's never fully like that, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, those are the stages of grief.
yeah.
That is, what grief is. And then just to kind of give a little bit more details about grief, I know, I did some research, and one of the most common questions about grief, believe it or not, I mean, I never would have thought about it, but the question is, can grief make you sick? And it does.
It does.
It does.
Yeah.
It makes you sick in multiple ways. It can affect your immune system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it can affect your heart health. And that one I feel like is more common. Obviously, it can affect your sleep, obviously.
Not wanting to eat too. Like your appetite.
Yep. It can definitely affect a lot. But I just wanted to touch base on that really quick, because that is one of the most common questions. So I just wanted to kind of answer that if that is a question that someone may have.
Yeah.
So to get back to the conversation, obviously grief is hard. But another thing that we kind of touched base on was about how grief can be very hard during the holidays.
Yeah.
So in our experiences, unfortunately, every single one has happened right before a big holiday, before Thanksgiving and before Christmas.
Yeah.
And it's very hard. And I feel like one of the hardest things about it is being in that guilt stage. You feel huge guilt celebrating holidays. You don't, like, for me, I feel like we didn't know if we should celebrate. For Thanksgiving, we questioned if we should even still get dressed up.
Like, even the word celebrate.
Yeah.
Like, what is there to celebrate?
Oh, yeah.
We just experienced such a great loss that way, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like for Thanksgiving, I felt that hugely, but I do very much love the way my family did it.
Yeah.
We still did get together, and I feel like when we did a prayer, everyone was on the same page. We all knew what we were praying for and what we have lost, and we were all there for one another. So I feel like that was really good. I felt like it was a very great experience. And, when I went back to work and people were saying, like, hope you had a great holiday, one of the things I just kept saying was, like, it was a hard holiday, but everyone was together.
Yeah.
To share, the feeling and to spread the love together. I feel like that was really good.
Yeah, it was, because ultimately you need that family time. And I think for us, if I can go back to 2022 to explain those feelings, with one of the passings being not even just the passing, but the services were like 5 days before Christmas. And what we wanted to do, like a light show, we had plans to do the Christmas light show. We had plans to just do different things to celebrate the holiday. And I remember feeling like, am I allowed, or like, should I do these things? Knowing darn well that the people who did pass away, they wouldn't have wanted us to miss out on these things, especially with it being like one of Ava's, like, first Christmas. But it's just like, that in itself is really hard. But to point out, like, how the family, my in-laws are the best. Like, the Cruz family, it just have my heart. Like, it's just the way we were, like you said, like, we were like, oh, should we get dressed up? Because it almost feels like, look at me, I'm like getting all dressed up and getting all nice. And should I even take pictures? But what we did was, like you said, we were all in unison. Like, we all gathered together, and we were still mourning, but still, like, being in that close proximity with your family, it just felt like comforting. Like, we were, like you said, like, we weren't like, yeah, let's get the drinks out. Like, just different thing. It wasn't a party by any means. And so never feel guilty for having gatherings with your family during these times, because you need that. You're not really called to be in isolation. Like, God doesn't want you to be isolated during hard times. So if you find yourself in a state of, I need to isolate myself, you have to rebuke that. You have to be strong. You have to pray. And it's okay to have bad days. It's okay to feel down and want some alone time. But constant isolation during grief is not, it's not it. Like, you have to push. And it's so hard. It's really hard, because when you see someone, you have to talk about it. They're going to ask you about it. How do you feel today about it? And even if you don't want to talk about it, sometimes you see in the end that conversation, you needed it. So if you ever feel like you're in a state of needing to be isolated, I would just encourage you to pray. Talk to at least one person, and it could be God. God hears you and he hears your cries. I'm talking like I've wept, like just like sobbed, and I feel like I got comfort the next day from someone. Like I didn't even, like they reached out to me, and I felt like I needed isolation, and like God uses people to minister to you. And so I'm not gonna start preaching on here, but yeah, just if I could just say anything about that, just be careful with isolation, like during grief.
Yeah, that definitely is hard.
Gatherings are important.
Yeah, so definitely, I would recommend gathering if you can. I would recommend still celebrating the holidays. It's definitely not going to be the same, especially depending on who it is to you that you may have lost during that time. But I feel like it's important as a huge step moving forward. But I feel like it's important. I feel like it is important. You're going to question almost every single thing you do, but it's important to continue to move forward, especially if you have little ones. Like, we've had a conversation and they said they don't really know what's going on 100%. So the best way for you to continue to help them not feel what you're feeling is to allow them to still have the celebration that they normally would. So, if you're not going to do it for yourself, it's a good thing to kind of do it for those around you in your lives. If you may have little ones, to kind of help them out.
Yeah. Well, we have a toddler, and obviously our infant doesn't know what's going on aside from milk, data, and it's just, I guess, not even to get too sidetracked, but children don't fully grasp grief. And so it's hard. Oh my goodness. That's another thing. Being a parent in the midst of grief is so hard. Like having our toddler come up to me while I'm crying, "Mommy, I want a snack." Oh, like I'm laughing about it now. We're talking about it now. But in that moment, it's like, I was baffled. Like our first experience, our daughter was like not even talking full sentences, and like she was sleeping, so like kind of like where our baby is now. Like they don't understand what's going on. But something worth mentioning, that a friend, like what you said, you briefly mentioned, I have a really close friend of mine that said, like, for the kids, they don't know what's happening. It's a regular Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. For us, it's one of the hardest like days of our life. But for them, you kind of have to learn how to navigate and push through so that they can have kind of like a normal day. Like while our day is falling apart, we still have to push. And that's hard in itself, being a parent while grieving. But what they mentioned during the holidays specifically is you have to make the most of their holidays while they're small. And don't feel guilty about that, because like I said before, the person that you lost likely would have wanted you to still not just live life and not care that they're gone. But someone that I think of the most is Ray Ray. There's a memory, and you can share that, you can put this on here if you want to, but there's a memory. We went to go visit her, and Joey, it's like his mom, like his whole light and world. And he will get emotional because, naturally you see your grandparents are getting older, regardless of the state that they're in. You get every time you see them, there's like a realization of like, they're getting older, right? Like it's getting harder for them to do certain things. And I remember us being in conversation and her just hugging him. And I took a picture of that moment. You know what I'm talking about? And she's like hugging him and comforting him and saying like, don't cry. Like, don't cry. When I'm gone, just don't be sad. And it's like, I know it's hard to just really process that, but I feel truly that's what gets me going. Like, and my grandma always says, like, I have my grandma here, and she'll say, when I pass, I'm going to be with Jesus. I don't want to hear nobody crying. I want you to be happy. It's hard to think of being happy when you just lost somebody you loved and known for your entire life, but I truly think that in the midst of grief, it's really important to understand and to take that advice from your loved ones, like really hold on to that, because that's what brings me comfort. Like like I remember talking to your grandmom and both of your grandmothers, like they would talk about like when that time comes, like they're gonna be good, and they are good. Like it's good to remember those times that you had that conversation with them to stay strong. It's easier said than done, but again, that's something that brings me comfort, during
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely. It does. Kind of, I guess.
kinda.
It does.
When
I
you're going
mean,
through it, it's like you don't know how this feels. Like they don't know how that. I mean, I'm sure they have grieved someone else, but
yeah. But so I feel like overall on the topic of grief, we've gotten to a lot. I feel like there's a lot more that we can touch base on, but I want to save that. I love this conversation that we've had today.
yeah.
So I feel like we can wrap this up here and then we can engage this on another day.
Yeah, if you feel that we missed anything, or not even that we missed anything, if there's something you want us to dig a little deeper on, and if we can, we will. Like, if you want to reach out to us, let us know, hey, I'm grieving this person, and what are some ways we can get through grief? We can even talk about a full episode dedicated to different things to do, different resources. And we can just, even if it's a short video and just in regards to some resources, we could definitely, make that happen. So yeah, if you feel like we missed anything, definitely, leave a comment, a DM, whatever source of communication you have with us, definitely utilize those resources. And we're here to do another video. We could do a part 2 on grief if you feel like we need to talk about more things.
Well, we are gonna do it. We are gonna do a part 2 on grief. So we do advise you 100% to share whatever you would like us to talk about on that episode. Because there's so much more that I personally want to get into. And I feel like it's just not enough for one video. It's really not, and it's something I'm very, very passionate about because I'm very, very. It's so hard. I'm very passionate because I'm very affected. I just, I feel like we definitely will do a part 2.
Yeah.
And we just need everyone to share what they want to hear in that part 2 so that we can make it the best video we can for everyone and make sure we help everyone as effectively as possible. So we thank you very much for watching. We ask that you like this video if you're watching on YouTube. We'll have this out on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and anywhere else that you may be watching your podcast on. You let us know so we can help get it on everywhere to make it available for everyone. I truly, truly thank you so much for listening to me and allowing me to be open. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not sure if you noticed, but in the beginning, I almost stopped doing it because I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to. But I did push through, and I'm so glad that I did because I'm really hoping that someone will take some good feedback from this. So I thank you so much for listening to me share my experience, and I know that we both are grateful. But I thank you so much on my end. And I'm going to pass it on to you to share anything you may want to.
Yeah, thank you so much for watching the Mental Uplift Podcast. Definitely stay tuned for more topics to come. As we mentioned previously, definitely let us know if there's anything at all that you need to discuss. If you need any assistance with resources, we are here for you. And as always, you are loved, you are appreciated, and thank you for waking up and being you. And just keep staying strong. And if no one's told you lately, you're an amazing person and you are so loved, and just keep pushing. Like, we love you. We really do.
We do.
Yeah.